Hello and welcome. I am going over 10 of my favorite balance exercises that I use in the clinic. The first one is the tandem balance. I'll use this for you if you are recovering from an injury of the lower extremity, if you have vestibular, so inner ear balance issues, placing one foot in front of the other, or staggered if that's difficult, or on an unstable surface like a pillow if it's not difficult, or with rotation of either the neck, now that's more challenging than you think, or of the whole torso. This is an excellent one to do safely with a chair in front of you or in the corner of a room. You want to do both sides, and often you'll find that one side is more difficult than the other. So number 2 is a tandem balance walk, and this is a wonderful way to practice that stability very functionally because we always have to walk. And so placing one foot in front of the other, and again staggered if you need to, squeezing through the thighs, the core and the bum, and you're walking one foot in front of the other. Third exercise is the single leg balance. So this is the classic, and this is often one that I'm using to diagnose an issue in terms of lower body strength, stability, or balance. So what I'll do is I will have you raise one foot and then the other. And what I'm looking for is if you're bowing out through your hip, if your trunk leaning, if there is a lot less stability through the ankle, we are addressing from toe to hip any instabilities, proprioception, lack of strength by practicing the single leg balance. So it's a wonderful one. You can practice incidentally, you can be in the kitchen, you can be just talking to your friend and practicing this. So trying to balance on all of your toes, thinking of pressure into the big toe, the pinky toe, and the heel. And then as you do this, you want to have in mind that your hips, and use a mirror if you're not sure, that your hips are staying stable. So there's not one hip hiking, the hips are stable, and that you're really over that leg. So we obviously have a little bit of curve, some of us more than others, but you just don't want to be bowing out because then you're not really using the muscles of stability, using glute med and glute max. So that's the single leg balance. With the chair, I'm able to just make sure I've got something, or with the wall, I'm able to make sure that I've just got something to stabilize me, because now what we're going to do is move from just a single leg balance to a single leg hip hinge or mini squat. So you can't really see my hip, knee, and ankle tracking here, but if you could, you would be looking for alignment throughout. So as I come down through this hip hinge, a number of things can happen, which can be problematic for me when I'm running or when I'm doing my exercise. So if you notice that my knee were wavering in, that I was bowing out, that I was leaning in any way, then there would be some lack of stability through this balance. So this is a wonderful diagnostic tool for me. I can see what you're doing, how you're tracking every time you walk, every time you run, and it's also a great exercise to use. So again, it's nice to have a little point of support, even if your fingers are feather weighted on it, so that you're making sure that you're not having to compensate, because really then we're not using the muscles that we need to be using. You want to feel that for your ankle and all of the change, that everything's getting stronger. So my single leg heel raise is going to look like this. So we go up onto our toes, and this on its own is a really challenging balance. So just being up on our toes and having the stability through the calves. Now what we can do with a wall behind us or a wall beside us is pick one leg off. And this can be quite challenging. You'll notice one side more than the other would be challenging usually. So for me, it's my left side. So you may have noted that when I transferred. And again, we're kind of feather weighting. So if I take my hands off, I lose my stability here. So this is a wonderful way to look more specifically at the calf muscles and trying to balance those out as well. Now, if we want to make this a little more dynamic, we can do a walk on our toes. And again, we're trying to ensure that we're not wobbling and compensating, but rather we're just moving and tracking one foot in front of the other. But then we move into a more dynamic exercise like the lunge, and I may see that there is a lot more going on when we make things a little quicker. So coming into that lunge, what we'll find is that finding that stability, that tracking right away, can be another wonderful balance exercise. So again, you want to make sure that your foot, knee, and hip are aligned. If you have knee pain, you don't want your knee to come too far in front, and staying strong and stable through the hips, through the glutes, through the core. So that is our lunge. Now for people who are a little more advanced and are finding that this is going really well, you can do a quick switch over, and that becomes a little more of a hop. And so on my left side, I'm a little bit weaker, and that's where I would practice finding a little more dynamic stability on that side. So this is a wide leg stance, wide angle pose in yoga, if you do yoga. Now with this one, I'm going to emphasize this sort of anterior posterior plane. I want you to put a lot of pressure on your forefoot. And then as you're coming forward, so hinging forward from the hips, what you're going to try to do is avoid falling over. So as you come forward, you're going to want to keep and hinge your hips back, but I'm going to challenge you to maintain your balance as you keep your hips relatively where they are, so having to use the muscles of the front. So rather than my hips reaching back, I have my hips staying relatively in the same position as I reach forward, and then I'm gonna ragdoll myself back up. So tucking my sacrum under, tucking my lower lumbar spine under, all the way back up to my thoracic spine. So if you saw this from the side profile, you'll see that I will transfer my weight a little bit backward, but I'm really trying to avoid it through this balancing exercise. And what I love about this balancing exercise is that it will often just show us where we are at for our strength through our calves and our ability to stay in one plane. Good. So I'm actually just watching the screen to make sure that I'm not translating backward, and then coming all the way back up through a ragdoll. This can be a wonderful way to incorporate your balance exercises without overloading on those joints. So what I'm going to have you do is peel your core or your back away from the mat, and then you're going to be pressing into the backs of your forearms as well as the right foot as you lift the left. So that's our single leg bridge. Now I want you to compare that to the other side. And as you compare that to the other side, you'll notice, is it harder? Is it easier? Where is the challenge there? You can also try doing this with a bit of a heel raise, and notice how that changes your balance from side to side. One important note here is to, again, look at the stability of the pelvis. You don't want one side to be kind of leaning down. You want them to be relatively level, such that if you had a book on top of your hips, it would not slide down. So those can be challenging. Holding those for 10 seconds is a nice way to do them initially. And then to make that single leg bridge more dynamic, what you can do is just come into a march. So this is our mini march, and this can really highlight that stability, because we would see, if the balance and stability were not good, a relative dip of the hip. So you can do this and observe this really nicely by having your thumbs on your hips or a book on your hips, but ultimately you don't want this happening throughout the movement. Dog. Now bird dog is still challenging our stability through our core and through our hips, and we can do this in a stepwise fashion. I want you to come first into neutral spine. So neutral spine is not too dipped here, not too tucked under. It gives us as much space as we can possibly have through the spine for good mechanics and space to allow us to move comfortably. And now I'm going to have you hinge your leg back. And as you hinge your leg back, you'll notice that the weight wants to come more onto your right hand. And I want you to avoid bringing that left hip towards the wall. So keeping that left hip strong, squeezing through your bum. You can bring the leg up in relative degrees, but as you do that, try to make sure that your hips are not dipping, arching, rotating, anything like that. So that is your bird dog with just that leg. And then if you want to challenge yourself to then raise your other hand, you can do so. And that on its own is a balance, trying to maintain core stability as well as that pelvic stability through that. So that is your bird dog. Or a yogi, or you've done yoga, you may have seen an exercise called crow. And in this exercise, we're using that deep core to elevate and lift us up, and then it looks as though we're balancing on our arms. So this is quite a challenge for me, and I've done a couple seconds here and there, but I used to do it all the time before I had my babies. So now we're gonna try it again, and I'm gonna show you what you need to do to get into this pose, but make sure that you're safe throughout. I'll give you some options to try it before committing to coming into the pose. You should always feel safe through your wrists, through your core, and in general in your environment. So you can also opt to do this on a surface that has maybe pillows around it too. So with that in mind, you can observe, and I don't know how this is gonna go, my crow. Again, we are really thinking about core strength here. And so when I talk about activating my core, I'm gonna actually be drawing the core in without pushing it out. So to begin, I want to come into a forward bend. And this one is going to be one in which I'm really trying to lengthen through my spine. So I'll walk my hands a little bit further out to find that length through my spine. So as I find that length through my spine, I draw my belly button in. I try to make sure my shoulders and traps are nice and relaxed here. And then I come into a bit of a tricep press, bend through my elbows. As I do so, I try not to lose the length through my spine. So I'm still reaching back through my spine and drawing my belly button in. And now my weight starts to transfer towards my arms. So I'm going to stop talking here in a moment as I try to focus on finding this balance. So what I recommend you do is you just come up onto your toes and see if you can trust yourself to lean forward as you draw up. All right, so thank you for observing that with me. I'm happy with a couple of seconds at a time. I know that's going to grow into a stronger core and a stronger balance, and I hope that you are too when you explore your own body through these balances and really thinking about the principles of alignment and building from those. You're going to find that you just grow stronger and that you achieve greater things each and every time you do it. So do this. Choose a few, do this as a daily practice. I hope that you got something out of my top 10 balances, and please do subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me, and let me know in the comments if you subscribe, where you're from, where you're coming from, and something about you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.